Hi, welcome to Nina in the Kitchen, where today I am honoring a request from Orleans artist. She asked about an apple cake. It's so delicious. It's got fresh apple in it and cinnamon, nuts, coconut. It's a keeper recipe. One way that people make it is in a 9x13 pan. And of course, what you get in the end are little squares. So if you want that shape, fine. I like a slice, and so I'm making it in this Nordic ware pan. This is a 10-cup pan. And of course, the way to prep the pan is you can butter it with a soft butter and then flour. I used Baker's Joy, just sprayed it in. Make sure you get the edges and flour that as well. So let's just get started. First, let's talk about the apples. These are Granny Smith's. This is 3 cups of apples, which is about 1.5 pounds. And I cut it into a dice. I would say that's between a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch dice. That's important for this recipe, in my opinion. If you cut slices, it gives you a different mouthfeel, and the dice really works well. This cake gets 2 cups of flour. And what I do is I just take a little bit from one of those cups and sprinkle some sugar over it. That was maybe 2 tablespoons. And then just toss that around. This is called macerating your fruit. What it does is it helps to exude the juices from it. What I do with this cake is I think of it as the batter and then the chunky stuff. The other part of the chunky stuff is I have toasted and chopped pecans. You can use walnut for this as well. And you don't even have to toast it, but it does give you a much better flavor if you toast nuts. And I just put it on top like that, and then I do the same with, this is just dried sweetened coconut, baking aisle, that's 1 cup. That just gets set aside. And you can do this part probably an hour before you make the cake. My oven is preheating to 350. So now what goes in your mixer is start with the wet ingredients. 3 eggs, 3 large eggs. 1 1/4 cup of a neutral flavored oil. Neutral oil could be anything like a vegetable oil, corn oil, or canola oil. And then your sugar goes in. So I said there were 2 cups of sugar. Let me just get one more. Sugar is always a wet ingredient in baking because it melts, but it also creates an agitation. This just goes for 2 minutes at a medium speed. This is 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and then just blend it in. You can see how quickly this all goes together. This is 3 cups of all-purpose flour. This is 1 teaspoon of baking powder. There's 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and this is 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. I like a fresh nutmeg, and it's so simple to do. If you hold your microplane upside down, you can see how much you're actually creating. We need a 1/4 teaspoon, and I would say I'm there. Then just blend this together, and just put this on a slow speed and just add your dry ingredients. Once they're blended, that speed was on 2 if you're using a KitchenAid. Now I have the coconut, the nuts, and the apple, and I'm just going to toss that around and mix them up. And then all of this just goes right into your batter. Give this a stir. If you're using a hand mixer, you'll have to do this part by hand. And that's it. That's how you make the cake. I can smell the toasted pecans and the coconut and the vanilla. The vanilla really comes through. Just pour the batter in. I just take the cake pan and just shake it. This is a heavy batter, so I just want to make sure it's getting into all those little crevices in this pan. When this cake comes out of the oven, I'll see you then, because that's when you start cooking your caramel topping. The aroma of this cake is incredible. This house smells so delicious. So it's vanilla. You smell the notes of the cinnamon, but it's Really, really delicious cake. So I'm going to take this skewer and just, let's see what happens. Perfect. You see, there's just a few little crumbs clinging to this skewer, and that's exactly what you want. If you pull out a skewer and it's absolutely clean after you bake a cake, remember this cake is still baking and it will be for a few minutes. So it's very delicate right now. Don't try to turn it out. This cake, because of the size, is going to be, I'm going to say 15 to 20 minutes before you can flip it out of the pan. So now bring your attention to the caramel sauce, because this sauce will take just about 15 minutes to make. This is 7 tablespoons of butter, unsalted butter, which I've melted. I'm adding brown sugar to that. Light or dark brown sugar, really doesn't matter. That was 1 cup of sugar. I'm just going to get this nice and wet. Now I'm putting milk in. This is 1/4 cup of milk. And I'm doing a pinch of salt. That's a kosher salt. This will come up to a boil, and when it does, you can just stand back and let it go. This will take about 15 minutes or so to get to what is called a soft crack stage. If you don't have a thermometer, don't worry, I'll show you how you can figure that out. Later on, when this comes off of the heat, I'm going to add 1½ teaspoons of vanilla to this sauce. You want to do it off heat because vanilla extract is made with alcohol, and the alcohol base burns off while you're cooking it. So leave that for the end because you really want to keep that flavor there. Now it's beginning to boil. I'm just going to stir it occasionally until I don't feel any grittiness at the bottom, and that means that the sugar has been melted, and we're there already. So I'm just going to let this bubble. Make sure it doesn't overflow. And then you just let it go. You don't have to touch it again. I'll check it in 10 minutes. So the caramel sauce has come up to 235 degrees on my candy thermometer. If you don't have a candy thermometer, that's not a problem. What you do is you take your wooden spoon, put it in there, and then just run your finger across. Lick your finger, it's really yummy. Then hold this upside down, or vertically I should say. And you'll see nothing is dripping into that space that I just created with my finger. That is what is called a soft crack stage in candy making. And that means that we now have a caramel sauce, also known as pralines if you're from New Orleans. Love that accent. This is the vanilla, and I'm putting that in right now. And stir that up. So now it's time, oh, now this smells delicious with the vanilla in it. Now it's time for me to flip this cake out. When you have a bundt pan or something with a non-stick interior, any cake dish has that nowadays, you don't want to do anything that's going to scratch it, so don't use a knife to go in here. What I do is I'll take my thinnest blade of a spatula, of a silicone spatch, and put that in and just kind of make sure that everything feels kind of loose in here, and it does, good. So this is ready to be popped out. It kind of moves away from the pan a little bit, and then around here where it's very thin, I'll go in with a little wooden skewer. Wood does not scrape, and that's loose as well. It smells so good. And that's it, that's the cake. What you do is you just pour this caramel sauce over it. Of course you want it in all the nooks and crannies. Keep a pan underneath because you can just keep recycling this sauce. So this is about 2/3 of the amount of sauce that was in here. That was the first pour. And as time goes by, this caramel sauce gets a little thicker, and it also, as it cools, you can start painting all of these little intricate places on your decorative pan, if that's what you're using. Well, after the first dose, if you will, of caramel sauce, I waited about 4 minutes, and that's because this becomes much thicker, as you can see, and I think it's actually easier to work with. So at this point, you can just sort of drizzle this over. This is a silicone basting brush. It has a lot of uses, and what's nice about it is this goes right into the dishwasher. So it's easy to use, it's easy to clean. Not delicate enough for pastries, but something like this is a perfect use for these brushes. So I'm just making sure that this cake is going to be sort of crusted in this caramel sauce. So I'm just going to keep painting and pouring. And here it is. I've dusted it with a little powdered sugar. The caramel topping is also called praline, depending on where you live. The first piece is always the ugliest, right? So you can just see how moist this is. This is such a great cake with a cup of coffee, milk, tea. The texture of the coconut and the pecans or walnuts really comes through. The apple and the oil keeps this cake so moist. The pecans kind of stand out because they've been toasted. And then when you eat the crust, there's a crunch to that. So the texture change is also really nice. It's really a beautiful cake. So easy to make. I hope you try this recipe. The recipe is right below the description. And please subscribe and ring the bell so that you can be notified when I have more videos that come up. Thank you again so much. Bye guys.